All right, guys, welcome back to another client interview. Today, we are joined by Paul, who has been on our program now for a few months, but has already made some substantial progress. And he's actually here to share his results. So, Paul, what's been going on, man? How are you?
Doing well. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, the results have been great and really excited to be working with you guys, your team, and Lloyd's been great.
Awesome, dude. Yeah, and in a short period of time, you've made some great progress. Before I go into the results, just want to dive into kind of bit about you. So, do you just want to share a little bit about yourself, kind of background, occupation, and kind of where you were before you came to Elite on the program?
Yeah, so I spent better part of my professional career in professional services, working long hours. Client service, client delivery is very demanding work. A few years ago, jumped into entrepreneurship, been doing my own thing for the last couple of years. And, entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. And as I'm sure you well know, right? You own your own business. And, it's, and so I, you know, to get the business off the ground, it comes with sacrifices, and it comes with sacrifices of time, of health, um, and whatnot. And so you know, I think over time I just started to let myself go. I would say I was pretty good about getting into the gym, pretty consistently, though I wasn't necessarily, I don't know what I did. I did a lot of these off the shelf programs, and, trying to essentially use a lot of my background knowledge because I played sports in high school. And so, being in the gym, being healthy was always something that, was something that I always did and pursued and was always good. But, the entrepreneurship journey really kind of was taxing on me. And I will say one thing that mentioned is that shortly after my shortly after I started my business, I got a leg injury, a knee injury, and that set me back as well. So not only was I spending a bunch of time, excuse me, not only was I spending a bunch of time, just working on the business, but I was also kind of laid up, like, lateral movements on my knee were just difficult, almost impossible. And it took almost a year just to recover from that, and I just started packing on pounds. Yeah, painting a pretty dire picture from being feeling like I was healthy and okay, managing my weight, maybe not necessarily happy altogether, but managing through it all the way down to like, I got to a point where I was like, I'm done. Like I need some help. And yeah, and that's how I came across you guys.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. And I think for a lot of guys that watch this that have maybe played professional sports in college or have a background in this, they go from a high level of sport to focus on the career. The type of training that you're doing when you're playing college football or college sports is just not going to be sustainable with running a business. But also, the time shift happens as well, where all of your time and energy is going into the business and trying to grow that you have less time for your health. So you're kind of at this crossroads, right? Where you've had all of the success health wise, and then you go to like ground zero kind of thing with your health, or get into a bad spot, and you realize, damn, there's time to do something now. For you, Paul, what was that point where you thought, okay, now is really the time that I feel that I want to change this, and that turning point for you to jump on the program?
Yeah, so I think at the end of the day, it was I think I was just fooling myself by looking in the mirror, right? I'd see myself in the mirror and be like, it's not that bad, you know. But the forcing function was, it's now early spring, um, and it was I was going into the holidays, and I was trying to put on a suit, and oh man, and the suit had been tailored to my body that was before I gained all the weight, and so I went to go put that on, because after leaving corporate America, I just didn't wear suits as much anymore, and so I went to go put that thing on, and it was I, I don't even know if I was able to button it. And I was like, I couldn't, I was, it was shocking. It was shocking to me. And I was like, I couldn't believe that I had just let myself go this bad, where, I wasn't necessarily extremely fit when I actually was able to fit into that suit. And so that was basically the death knell, the thing that I was like, okay, it's time to change. It's time to change.
No, that's understandable. There's usually a wake up call that most guys have, a turning point before they decide to join the program. And I always ask guys on the first call is, what was that thing for you? Sometimes it's a suit, sometimes it's not being able to take their shirt off at the pool, sometimes it's something that's happened in a business meeting that didn't go very well because of health or not looking great. So everyone has their kind of reasons. And for you, Paul, when you were kind of at that highest weight, what were the impacts you were feeling on energy, performance? Because it's not just about
Oh
looking good.
yeah.
I know that's important, but probably what's even more important is the energy that you have to show up with in business, for your family, for your company, and things like that. So, what was that like for you?
Yeah, so I would say like the energy is a good one because you know, I consider myself a very innately just a high energy individual. Just from a capacity standpoint, I can take on a lot more than even a lot of my close friends, just in terms of schedule and activity and whatnot. But I would say that, yeah, I mean, I got to the end of the day and I was like ready to sit on the couch. I was ready, you know what I mean? And I think, shedding all this weight and these pounds and getting healthy and getting that exercise in, it yeah, the energy is back up. Now I'm like, oh my goodness, what am I gonna do with it? And it's a great time because I got a little 6 month old, and so I walk around the house at night. Sometimes just to get my steps in, but but also just knowing that I've got that energy. I've got that energy to go outside and play ball with my kids. I've got 5 kids now. So busy dad, busy owning a business, and so it's a great feeling. And I'm 10 years older than my wife, and so being highly active and being fit and in shape is just, there's the taking the long view. There's the longevity, health wise, you know, um, just knowing that the more I take care of myself now, the better. Like I mean, and who knows what could come, right? But just all of the preventative maintenance that I'm doing right now, to make sure that anything having to do with me that's solely dependent upon me for longevity, I'm checking those boxes now for the sake of my family.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. And I always say to people, like, health is probably one of the highest ROI things you can do as a business owner and a father and a family man, because, yeah, you've got the physical looks that help, the way you present yourself in meetings. It's the extra energy that you've got when you get home, whether that's with family, whether that's to do more work and more output. But it's also the role model that you're being to your family and to your wife and to your kids, and showcasing that to them as they grow up. They're going to be thinking, wow, my dad is ripped and jacked. I want to be like him. It's a great thing, man. Like, I think that's one of the best parts of getting in shape. And I know for you, Paul, you're down now like 20 pounds in a few months. So you've mentioned some of the energy changes you felt. Like, what other benefits have you seen in your life from the changes so far?
Yeah, energy. I will say I'll double click on what you just said there a little bit in just terms of being a role model for my kids. I've got 3 boys, and my boys are, when they're asking for lunch, they're not. My wife is telling me this. She's like, they're all now asking for protein. They're asking how much protein is in it. So it's great. But I couldn't agree with you more in terms of just being, for the business itself. I've got a COO, and he's an avid um, um, workout guy. Like, he gets into the gym a lot, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I'll tell him, hey, look, man, I'm cutting out an hour early. I'm gonna go hit the gym, and he's like, yes, go. Like, the business actually needs you to be healthy. And so he's got a great perspective at it on it as well. And I would say, yeah, just I before we started recording, I told you guys I was on a business trip up to New York City, and walking city blocks, and just being able to just literally network all day. I took a very early morning flight. I was in meetings, conference rooms, um, like all day. Literally 13, 14 hours of this stuff. I just had it. I had the energy to go, man. And it was great. And I felt like I was, to your point, presenting myself very differently. There's a certain level of just confidence, right? When you're in the room and you're feeling fit beneath your shirt, right? It's great. So, and I would, so other things I would say, the way my clothes fit, um, my sleep, the way I'm sleeping, better sleep overall, stress levels. There's an outlet now that I have. There's a lot, from a qualitative standpoint, is really good. And I would even say, desires, right? So like, you know, there's an element of, and not because I'm certainly dieting right now, but there's an element of like certain foods that I used to gravitate towards, like, the candy or something like that, which was like, it hits you. Um, and you probably know the scientific things that like the endorphins or whatever that comes from like eating a chocolate bar or something like that, right? Um, I don't need those now, right? And so there's a certain element of like, I'm not enticed, if you will, to pick up that Reese's and like slam that thing or five of them, right? Um, I look at it and I'm like, I actually don't want that because I know what it's gonna do to me. I'm gonna crash after that, and it's and it's fun to see the sensitivities of my body in relation to food in a good way that I know to steer clear of some things because I know that like not to go overboard, and I don't want to create an environment for myself or my family where I'm overly particular about food, or or I create some kind of um odd relationship with food, you know what I mean? Right? But at the same time, I want to be like, yeah, you actually don't need that, or there's a better way, and it's great.
Yeah, the desires point is really important because I think when you've been changing what you eat for a while, number one, your blood sugar regulates a lot more. So you have much more stable energy. You don't have these spikes and crashes that you get when you have candy bars, all the sweet stuff. But also your taste buds change over time because you're actually eating more whole and less processed food. So when that happens, you have something sweet and you're like, oh, actually, like this tastes like a bit crazy. I'm not used to this. I actually like my
Right.
bland, boring food because it doesn't give me these spikes, and my taste buds have changed. So I think that's a really important point on those. And I want to bring in Lloyd now as well because I know Lloyd's been great in supporting you through this. Lloyd, what's it been like to work with Paul so far, and why do you think he's seen such success in a short period of time?
I mean, it's great working with Paul because it's almost like obviously I have to do my work, but Paul does a lot of his work, so it makes my work a lot easier, right? And it's more of just kind of like guiding him versus like having to completely like overhaul and micromanage every area of his life. I don't need to do that essentially. And if you can take that accountability on yourself and you go into the program thinking, I need to make a change, I want to do this, I want to do that, and you've got pointers and you're getting told to go in the right direction by someone, I think it just makes it 10 times easier, right? I think Paul pretty much from the start knew, okay, I need to change slightly what I'm eating. Had conversations with his wife about, okay, we need to change some of the food and stuff that I'm having at dinner, like what can I have at lunch, breakfast and stuff. So we spent a couple of the early calls talking about that and locked in from probably like week 2, week 3 with that. And then in terms of the workouts as well, it's if the workouts are there, Paul does them, and if there's an issue, he'll bring it up and just say this certain exercise, like, is this right and stuff, and we could just go through it on the call. And when it's like that, it's pretty easy. Because yeah, he just follows what's being put out in front of him, and he's just trusting the process, and that's one of the most important parts, right? A lot of people struggle to trust the process, especially if they've never been through that process before. Because as Paul mentioned probably before we start recording, he went through a plateau of like 2 to 3 weeks. And I told him I'm not that concerned, and I think if you're in that position yourself and you're trying to make those decisions yourself, a lot of emotions come in. I know even with my own training, right? I'm way more emotional when it comes to my own training because it's you, right? You're going to want to make changes. You're like, well, what's going wrong? But I know as a coach, okay, Paul, I've seen people go through plateaus a million times. Let's hold our ground for 2 weeks. If there's still no budge, then yeah, let's make some changes. Didn't do anything. 2 weeks on, started to lose the weight again. And it was just a normal plateau. We could have overreacted, but that would have just caused probably more harm than good. I mean, he would have been eating less calories. He'd have been more hungry. So sometimes it's just a case of just pushing someone in the right direction and removing the emotion from the decisions as well and just trusting the process, which Paul's done amazingly.
Love that. Yeah, you make a good point on the plateaus bit as well, because I think a big reason why people struggle with weight loss is they go through this on their own and they hit this kind of roadblock, and that's the point in which they give up. But there's always like two paths you can take. You can do the giving up and say, hey, I'm not going to do this and rebound, or you stay persistent with the process, you stick to it, and actually you overcome that and you keep going. And actually those are the people in business, in health, in everything, overcome those roadblocks and don't give up when they feel like doing it. And it, like you said, it's removing those emotions sometimes from it can be the hardest part. So it's good to see that that's been overcome there. For you, Paul, as well, I know you're super busy. You got 5 kids, you got the company, a lot on your plate. A lot of people say, oh well, I don't have time to do this. Like, how can a program fit around my life when I've got so much going on? So what would you say to those people that would maybe be concerned about that?
Yeah, it's valid. I thought the same thing, and the truth of the matter is that I don't want to make an argument for the constitutional aspect of the way I'm wired, but it's like there's something about having the accountability was a forcing function for me to get serious about it, right? And so it was like, you know, I'm now paying the money, right? I'm writing the check, so to speak. And if I'm going to get something out of it, that means I've got to be able to, to make the change. And the truth of the matter is, it was one of those things where, as a busy entrepreneur and a dad, it was almost like the time. So I was like, what am I going to do? And what I found is that, you know, I'm actually more productive now that I've got more energy, right? There's more hours in the day actually for me, right? Where I actually feel like I can get stuff done. And then I'm more productive, not just from an energy standpoint, but even from even from the constraints of time, right? I know that if I'm gonna get 90 days or 90 days, excuse me, 90 minutes in the gym today, right? I need to hightail it and like, cut meetings short, cut calls short, not take as many calls, you know what I mean? Um, and so in a different way, it's been a forcing function just for me to get my calendar straight
Mhm.
and prioritize my health because as you mentioned and we kind of talked about already, having that health, having that energy, putting a priority on that is ultimately going to be better for me, for my business and my family.
Love that. Yeah. And it is about efficiency, because when you have something that's short and sharp, but actually gives you back more time in energy and output, I think that's a really big, you could say, game changer for people, because we've all got 24 hours in the day and, everybody says, I don't have the time. Well, what if we can make those 24 hours more efficient, more productive, more intentional? I think from a business owner standpoint, that's actually very appealing, right? We want to get more done in less time and we want to feel better while doing it. So no, I love that. And finally, Paul, for the guys that are watching that are on the fence about joining, even after hearing all your great results and seeing all of our amazing testimonials, what would you say to them as someone, because you were probably in a similar position as well? Like, what would you say to those people?
Yeah, I would say just do it because, Oliver, and you may or may not even recall this, but you and I spoke and we had an initial conversation. We traded some messages, and you were very intentional and very receptive to some of the things you engaged with me, and I was very, very happy for that. And I was like, I'm gonna try to do it. I've done it before. I'm gonna try to do it on my own, and so I think a year had gone by, and if you remember this, a year had gone
Yeah.
by, and I reached out to you again. I was like, a year has gone by, and literally nothing has changed. And in fact, if anything, it's probably worse. And so I did it, and Lloyd's been great to work with. The program's been great to work with, and the results are shown or are felt. And I'd say, for anybody sitting on the fence, it's absolutely been worth it for me.
Amazing, Paul. Well, thank you for sharing that. And final question. What's the goal body fat that you want to reach by the end?
Yeah. Yeah, going on record for the world. Yeah, I want to get down to 10. Yeah, I want to get
Nice.
down to 10%. I think I've been able to hit sub 15% before, I think in terms of I've seen statistics where sub 15% is less than 2% of the population actually is able to get down to that level. For me, I need big goals. I need stretch goals. That's just the way I'm wired. I'm not content unless I'm able to go big or go home, as they say. And so for me, I'm trying to get down to 10. And then speaking with Lloyd, I think that, it's appropriate, right? I think below 10, I think you start to feel, overly hungry. There's negative aspects and that start to work against you unless I was, in a professional bodybuilding world, professional athlete. But, getting down to 10, I think is good. It's a sustainable standpoint, and it's ultimately where I want to hit.
Love that, man. Yeah, absolutely. I think 10 to 15% or 10 to 12% is really the most optimal for most people. There's no real need to drop into the single digits unless you're doing a bodybuilding show. And what you typically find it is the law of diminishing returns as you get even lower.
Right.
So as you get down to like 6%, like you can't eat out, you got to be very strict, hormonal impacts, metabolism impacts, and actually it takes away a lot from your life. So I think 10 is a really great goal for you to hit. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Looking forward to hitting that too, by the way.
You will, man, for sure, for sure. But yeah, thank you for coming on, Paul. I really appreciate that. And Lloyd, thank you for joining as well. Guys, if you're watching and you want to get some results like Paul and you want to work directly with Elite, hit the link below the video and we'll get you started. So thanks, guys,
Yeah.
and we'll chat soon.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Cheers.